Hey everyone, I'm Tracie Goodman and I'm the Agriculture and Natural Resource Extension Agent for McCreary County Cooperative Extension. And today I wanted to talk to you all about chickens. So this is the beginner's guide to starting your very own flock. So first, why should you get chickens? One of the things that is a benefit to having chickens is that they're relatively easy to take care of. Once you get all of their needs in place, they pretty much take care of themselves. They are also small. They don't take up a lot of space, so you can basically have chickens anywhere, regardless of your yard size. The third biggest benefit to me is having fresh eggs. Um, Fresh eggs taste so much better. There's no comparison to your standard white eggs that you get in the grocery store. And it's a sense of pride whenever you collect your own eggs from chickens that you raise. They are also super kid friendly. So this is a great project to teach kids responsibility, and they can also take their eggs that they raise and possibly sell them at farmers markets. It's just a really great all-around lesson for kids. There are also many different breeds, so you can have a lot of fun selecting what kind of chickens that you want to raise, and you can select them based on egg color, on feather color, pretty much anything you want you can find. So before we start, I want to talk about a couple of terms that you need to know and that you might have heard. Poultry is the term for domestic fowl raised for meat, eggs, feather, work, or entertainment. A chick is a young baby chicken. A pullet is an immature female, so it's little older than chick. A hen is an adult female. A cockerel is an immature male, so that is basically the male version of pullet. A rooster is an adult male, and a broiler is a meat chicken. So other terms for broilers are fryers and roasters. So sex-linked is an inherited factor that is linked to the sex chromosomes and used in developing specific crosses to make sexing day-old chicks easier. So typically when chicks are sex-linked, they are easily told apart by their plumage, and that's the cross that people typically use to do that. Straight-run chicks are day-old chicks that have not been sorted by sex. Now these are also called unsexed chicks. Sexed chicks are day-old chicks that are separated into separate groups of male and female chicks. So a lot of people have heard the term broody. That is when a hen sits on eggs with the intent of hatching them. Molting is a part of the hen's reproductive cycle. So when she stops laying, she'll lose her body feathers and produce new ones. That is the process of molting. Free range is a pretty popular term that is used pretty liberally. It doesn't really have a legal definition, but it's typically used to refer to providing a flock with outdoor access. So there's really no specification to free range. It just typically means you allow your chickens to be outside. Culling is when you remove a chicken from the flock because of maybe productivity, because of age, health, or personality issues. Now, some considerations before you start getting chickens is think about what you want to do with them first. So if you want chickens basically as pets with benefits, so if you want chickens for eggs, then you're going to have to consider what you do with them when they no longer lay, because hens are not going to lay indefinitely. And there are also laws and ordinances in some communities that might prohibit or restrict the raising of poultry in your neighborhood. So you want to check on any restrictions in your deed or homeowners association rules that may prevent you from getting your own chickens. Some neighborhoods have restrictions on processing of animals. If local laws or ordinances allow you to raise birds but not process or slaughter them, you're going to have to determine where you'll take the birds for processing. Also, an important consideration is that chickens require daily care. So this includes weekends and holidays. If you're going to go on a trip, you're going to have to set up somebody to take care of your chickens while you're gone. Please consider the time and effort that is required for the care of a flock before deciding whether to start your own poultry flock. So you want to have a plan in place for if you are unable to take care of them, you have a setup that will allow you to get someone else to care for them, or something in place there that ensures that these chickens are receiving daily care. So before you get your chickens, you're going to want to make sure that you have structures in place to keep them. So housing, a coop should typically provide shelter from the weather. So you're going to, in the wintertime, sometimes they need a heat source like a heat lamp. You also want to provide shelter in the form of a roof for not only protection from rain, but for shade as well in the summer months when it gets really hot. You definitely want to provide adequate ventilation. Now, this is for them and for you because chicken coops can get smelly pretty quickly. You definitely want to provide protection from predators. So everything is going to want to get in there and eat your eggs or your chickens themselves. So when you're fencing around your coop, you want to make sure that your fence is maybe slightly buried a little bit and have a good barrier at the bottom so that things can't dig underneath it. And your coop really should be easy to build out of readily available materials. You can build a coop out of almost anything. It doesn't have to be expensive to build a chicken coop. So you want it to be low maintenance, and you want it to be able to support the changing needs as your flock changes. And typically the space rule that I would go by is maybe 3 square feet per chicken. You want to make sure that they have enough space to lay properly and just to be happy in general. So very important things that your coop needs is a waterer. You have to have a water source for your chickens. 1 quart will be sufficient usually for chicks. You definitely want a gallon size or larger water as appropriate as your chickens grow. And make sure that your water stays fresh and clean. So one way you can do this is changing the water daily. If you don't want to do that, you can get the nipple waterers or the little cups that attach to the bucket. I personally have the cups because I can keep a lid on my bucket. I have the cups at the bottom, and then I can just clean those out every day as opposed to watering them every single day and changing that out. You also want a feeder. Simple feeders like the little trays can be used when the birds are young, but you're going to want a larger feeder when your chickens grow. And ideally, I would suspend the feeder just to ensure sanitation, because chickens like to perch, they like to poop on stuff and get it dirty, and they'll scrape dust and dirt into their feed. So suspending it will keep them from doing that mostly. You also need bedding material in your coop. So not only does this help insulate, it keeps them warm, it also absorbs moisture and makes cleaning a little bit easier. So good material for bedding is like wood shavings, sawdust, rice hulls. Those are all good litter choices. And you want your litter to be at least 3 to 4 inches deep in your coop. Now, caked or matted litter, you want to remove that every day, and you want to change it probably weekly depending on the dampness of the bedding. You also want a roost or perch in your coop somewhere, because chickens, they like to sleep standing up and they like to sleep up high. And they also like to have a dust bath. This is how they keep clean. This is how they keep insects and little pests off of them like mites and lice. So just have like a little space for them, like maybe a little tub or a little area where you have some fine sand or dirt so that they can get down in there and take a dust bath. Now, if you want to have layers, so if you're using your chickens for egg production, you are going to want to make sure that you have nest boxes. Now, it's not really a requirement to have nest boxes. Chickens are going to lay no matter what, but this will provide easy access for you to access the eggs and keep them from walking over them, keep you from having to walk all around the coop and gather eggs. You know that they're going to be probably in that one spot. And this will also ensure that hens have a safe space for laying their eggs. Now, ideally, your nest boxes should be elevated, and hens like a slightly dark space to lay their eggs in. And kind of the general rule is 1 box for every 5 hens. Now, our chickens, they all like to use the same box. We have, we started with about 19. We have about 6 boxes, and they would typically use 2 of those 6 boxes. So it really depends on your chickens, but general rule of thumb, maybe you want to have 1 box for every 5 hens because they do like to share. And nest boxes should also be about 1 cubic foot in space, just to allow them maneuverability and comfort. And materials for nest boxes, you can pretty much build these out of anything. They don't have to be anything fancy. You can use milk crates, you can use plastic 5-gallon buckets or totes, or you can obviously build them out of wood, just whatever you have laying around, just as long as they are suspended and they're about 1 cubic foot in space. Now these are a few housing designs. This one is just a little coop. It looks like it's open and they're in a backyard, so they can kind of roam around as they want to. It has a little feeder there, a little run. It has a good little nest box, and so that people can open the door and get their eggs. That's really handy. This is another one that looks like it has a little fenced-in run area. So your run area is the space that your chickens have outside of your coop to roam around. I would highly suggest adding a run to your chicken coop or housing because they need a little space outside the coop. This one has it looks like their food and water outside of the coop, so this is in the run part of the area. Now this one is a good design for if you want to make a portable coop. This one is made out of cattle panels and looks like just a tarp over top of it. It's like a little hoop house. And they have their food and water source inside, and you can even make this more portable by adding wheels to it. This would be like a chicken tractor design, and you can move it around your field or your yard, and they can forage basically in different spots every day if you want them to, so they can get a little bit of different nutrients. Chickens love grass. That's their thing. They love to scratch around in it, find insects, and they also like to eat the grass. And this is the inside of a coop. This is kind of ideally what you want. It has a little space for a roost or a perch at the top so that they can sleep. It has nest boxes there. It has a hanging feeder. It has a pretty good amount of space. Looks like there's about 4 chickens in there at the time. So it has lots of ventilation. It has good windows. So this is ideally what you want. It also looks really secure. Now let's talk about actually getting your birds. So when you've got your structure ready, you got your plan in place, now you want to research what kind of birds that you want. There are many different hatcheries. There are online hatcheries that sell a variety of breeds for wide selection. There's so many poultry breeds. So kind of do your research, look at some of the ones that you're interested in, and research that particular bird and make sure that it's suited to your area and your home and what you are wanting out of your poultry flock. Now, it's also best to purchase from an NPIP certified flock. So this is when a hatchery has their breeder flocks tested under the National Poultry Improvement Plan. This isn't necessarily a guarantee that you'll get disease-free birds, but it does improve your odds. So you want to make sure that the hatchery that you buy from is NPIP approved. If you want to start with adult birds rather than chicks or pullets, your possibilities are going to be a little more limited. So you might try a local feed store for contacts on purchasing adult birds. Now, a common question is, how can you tell the difference between a male and female chicken? The male rooster is on the left of this picture and the female is on the right. So the difference in the size of the comb and wattles and the tail feathers are typically the indicator between male and female. Males have a larger comb and wattles. Their tail feathers are pointed, while those of the females are rounded. And obviously the male roosters crow while the females do not. Now, this is significantly more difficult to tell apart with chicks because they kind of look the same when they're first born. The male reproductive organs are located within the body cavity, so this makes it extremely difficult to determine sex based on their physical attributes. And sexing chicks really takes a lot of practice and a lot of training. So a good, easy way to tell them apart is when you purchase sex-linked chicks. This makes it possible to tell them apart based on their physical appearance, which is typically plumage color. So two of the very common ones are black and red sex link. Black sex links are when the males are feathered barred, which is just alternate markings of two distinct colors on the feather, like their mothers, and the females are usually a solid color, typically black. The red sex link, the males are white or they might have some black feathering depending on the cross. The females hatch out a buff, which is yellow, or red depending on the cross. So another question people ask is, do I need a rooster? Now, this depends on what your desired outcome is. If you want fertilized eggs, if you want your hens to hatch out some eggs, then yes, you need a rooster to accomplish that. If you don't care, if you're only going to eat the eggs, then no, you don't need a rooster. Hens will lay eggs no matter what. I mean, that's just what they do. So it's really a common myth that you need a rooster so that your hens will lay. So hens come into production around 20 weeks of age. That's when they start producing eggs. The most that a hen can lay is 1 egg per day. So typically they'll lay for a few days and then they'll take a little break. Their cycle is pretty heavy in the spring. You'll notice your egg production picks up a lot in the springtime, and it sort of falls back in the fall because of decreasing sunlight. So chickens, they lay depending on the hours of sunlight in a day. That pretty much drives their cycle. Preferably, you want to collect your eggs on a daily basis, and clean and store them in the refrigerator. The color of your shell, I want to point out, has no effect on the quality of the egg. So I personally have a mixed flock. We get eggs that look pretty much like this in the picture. They're blue. Some of them are blue. Some of them are dark brown. Some of them are a lighter color. It really doesn't matter. What matters is what they eat. So your yolk color is a definite reflection of what they eat. Leading into nutrition, poultry diets are composed of a lot of ingredients that are mixed to provide needs for energy, for protein, minerals, and vitamins. So there is no single ingredient that is going to meet the nutrient requirements of your flock. You want to buy a mixture. And it's important to feed the right feed to your flock. So your nutrient requirements are going to differ depending on your species, on your level of productivity, on the age of your birds. So the most important thing that you can do is research your birds and find out as much as you can about their nutritional needs and create a diet and buy feed based on what exactly they need. A biosecurity plan is basically a management plan to prevent the introduction to or the spread of disease to your flock. You definitely want to be able to identify signs of health problems and take immediate action as soon as you find these. So the biggest thing that I can suggest is that you need to know your birds. You need to spend enough time with them so that you recognize differences in their behavior and you recognize symptoms. So some symptoms of illnesses could be maybe swelling around their eyes or their combs, labor breathing, coughing, sneezing, obviously a big difference in behavior if they're really lethargic. There are many different signs, and you should be able to tell these if you spend enough time with your chickens and you know them. There are a variety of medications to treating diseases in chickens, but I really caution you to read the label before you administer any medication to your chickens. You're going to want to make sure that those are safe for poultry in general and that they are safe to give your breed of chicken. So definitely important thing is keeping your housing and your equipment clean, making sure that you change out their litter, making sure you change out their food and water and keep that really clean. Any equipment that you use inside the coop, you want to make sure and sanitize it. Just keep a sanitary area to keep disease down. And if you borrow any equipment from others, so maybe if you borrow like an incubator or something like that, You're going to want to clean and disinfect that before using it. The other chicken flock from this other person could be a carrier of disease, whether or not they're showing symptoms at the time or not. So that can occur even if they have been sick and recovered. They can pass disease along to your flock. One thing that you can count on by having chickens is poop. That's what they do, right? They lay eggs, they eat, they run around, they poop. Poultry generally do not take up a lot of space, but they produce a lot of manure that you definitely need to have a plan in place for taking care of that. So before starting any flock, make sure you know how to handle the resulting manure. And kind of look at it as an opportunity versus a waste product, because chicken manure is pretty valuable in gardening. You can compost that and make an excellent material to add to your soil or your garden. So you can really do a lot with this. Final thoughts. So decide why you want chickens first before you do anything. Think about whether you want to raise chickens for egg production or if you want to raise them for meat production or a mixture of both. Also, research and decide on a breed. Really think about what you want out of your chickens, what kind of temperament that you want. If you want small versus larger chickens, if you live in a neighborhood and you want a quieter breed, just really think about that and do your research before you decide on anything. And you definitely want to have a structure and a plan in place before you purchase any birds. I know that it's tempting to be spontaneous. Like if you go to a hatchery, you're going to want to buy every chick that you see there. Please don't do that. Please make sure that you have the space that is necessary to keep them first. Make sure that you have a safe area for them to be before you purchase any birds. You also want to have a biosecurity plan in place. So you definitely want to be able to identify common diseases and treat those diseases. Also have a waste management plan in place. This can sometimes be an afterthought, but you're going to want to think about what you want to do with the waste. So if it were me, I would definitely compost it. So you're going to want to start a compost pile or have a place to put that. Most importantly, just ensure that you have the time to devote to raising happy chickens. Having animals is a responsibility that no one should take lightly. You should make sure that you have the time and energy to devote to that before thinking about getting your own flock. These are my references that I use throughout this presentation. The first one is the University of Kentucky Department of Animal and Food Sciences website. This is a great resource for all things poultry. And a couple of publications from University of Kentucky as well, ASC 217, so you want to produce your own eggs, and ASC 242, composting poultry litter in your backyard. All of these references will be linked in the description box below. And lastly, this is my contact information. If you have any questions about anything in this presentation, as always, please feel free to contact me and I will do my best to help you. Thanks for watching.